In the 1930s, the name Machine Gun Kelly represented the absolute apex predator of the American underworld. He was the bogeyman of the Depression era, a man the public believed was ready to mow down anyone who stood between him and a bank vault. But the terror was largely a construction. When federal agents finally trapped him in a Memphis house, the legendary outlaw surrendered without firing a shot. As he was led away in handcuffs, his only concern was asking his wife for a quarter. To understand how a man who gave up so easily became a national icon of violence, look at the country's atmosphere. With millions facing economic ruin, many Americans saw bank robbers as social bandits, people sticking it to the institutions they felt had stolen their livelihoods. George Kelly Barnes wasn't born into this violence. He was an educated man from a comfortable background who realized that, in this specific culture, the ladder to success was built on outlaw escalation. George Barnes began his adult life not as a thug, but as a failed businessman. He was college-educated and came from a respectable Memphis family. But after his legitimate ventures collapsed, he looked for a path with higher margins. He started in bootlegging. During Prohibition, this was a low-risk, socially accepted trade that operated on an industrial scale. In cities like Memphis, corrupt political machines protected the business, making it a safe, entry-level crime for a man who didn't want to get his hands dirty. That safety vanished when he was caught and sent to Leavenworth Penitentiary. At the time, federal prisons served as a finishing school for the underworld, where small-time bootleggers were housed alongside professional killers and high-stakes thieves. Instead of reforming him, Leavenworth provided George with elite criminal mentors. He realized that if he wanted to live the extravagant life he desired, he needed to move beyond the bottle and pick up the gun. After his release, George moved to St. Paul and took on a new name, George R. Kelly. It was here he met Kathryn Thorne. While looking like an innocuous socialite, Kathryn was actually the strategist who engineered Kelly's rise to infamy. Kathryn understood that in the crowded world of bank robbery, George needed a brand. Payouts were higher for criminals who commanded immediate, overwhelming respect from their peers and terror from their victims. To build that brand, they purchased a Thompson submachine gun. The weapon functioned as a strategic marketing prop, giving George a terrifying silhouette that separated him from the average stick-up man. The legend of Machine Gun Kelly was born. The strategy worked. For years, Kelly terrorized banks across the country, often securing the vault through the sheer weight of his reputation before he even reached for the trigger. By 1933, the economics of bank robbery were failing. High physical risks and the need to split every take with a large crew meant Kelly wasn't getting the massive single payday he wanted. Looking for a shortcut to wealth, Kelly made a fatal decision. He graduated to kidnapping. He targeted an oil man named Charles Urschel, demanding a ransom of $200,000. Kelly believed he was in control, but Urschel methodically recorded his captivity. Blindfolded, he counted steps, memorized flight paths, and left fingerprints everywhere. Once freed, he gave these clues to authorities. Mapping the airplane schedules and weather, investigators pinpointed the hideout in Paradise, Texas. Kelly's arrogance was his undoing. He assumed his victim was a helpless asset, never realizing that Urschel was actually gathering the forensic evidence required to dismantle the entire operation. When Kelly moved his hostage across state lines, he triggered the newly enacted Lindbergh kidnapping law. For the first time, kidnapping was a federal offense, giving the government a direct mandate to pursue outlaws anywhere in the country. J. Edgar Hoover was ready to capitalize on this crisis. At the time, his Bureau of Investigation was a weak, often ignored agency. He desperately needed a high-profile victory to prove his men were more than just desk clerks. Using the forensic map, Hoover's agents raided the Texas farm and eventually tracked Kelly to Memphis. The capture was a public relations masterpiece, turning a bloodless surrender into a symbol of government efficiency. By escalating to kidnapping, Kelly lost his status as a social bandit. He became a public enemy, handing federal agents the exact leverage they needed to move from the shadows to the center of American life. Kelly's climb ended at Alcatraz. Banishment to the island fortress represented the absolute conclusion of the open-road outlaw era, stripping George Barnes of his manufactured myth and his freedom. Hoover used the victory to transform his agency. He weaponized Kelly's reputation in the press to justify a massive expansion of power. rebranding his men as the heroic G-men and placing the Thompson submachine gun firmly in the government's hands. The era of the celebrated criminal came to an end because figures like Machine Gun Kelly provided the state with the exact tools it needed to build the modern FBI.